So David Hopkinson is the newest person to take a seat at the Newcastle United boardroom table. But what can we expect from him based off what he's done previously? What is most importantly on the agenda for him from starting the role? And why should Newcastle fans maybe a little bit worried about what sort of things he might implement on the club? It's all coming up, Newcastle fans, so do us a favour if you're curious and stick around. Welcome back to Black White Band, ladies and gentlemen, and I hope you have all coped in what is a very soon, too soon, international break. 3 matches into the season. You could argue it's well timed for Newcastle, and I certainly argued that with injuries, players bedding in, but there's plenty to be excited out ahead of the football coming back, isn't there? If you're new around here, ladies and gentlemen, do me a favour. Whack that subscribe button, but most importantly, just give me a thumbs up. It means this video might be watched by a couple more people, and also get Black White Banter across all social media where I post very different types of content on every platform you can think of. So go and do that now. But we're not here to talk about my channel. We are here to talk about the channels that Newcastle might be going down under the new stewardship of David Hopkinson. But before we get on to him, let's talk about the man who he is replacing, a certain Darren Eales. Darren Eales is obviously stepping down with these health issues that we've known about for a while, but the man has still shown up. He's still put the graft in despite that health deteriorating somewhat. I've actually had the personal pleasure of meeting Darren Eales on a couple of occasions. First time was on the America pre-season tour, where I met him in a bar, amongst other places where it was open fan events. Lovely, lovely man. And more recently, when I was absolutely hammered in the hospitality seats at Sam Fender, where again, I got a photo with him. His wife was very accommodating. But the biggest thing I'll always remember about Darren Eales is he never treated any fan just as another person asking for a photo. He had this warmth about him that made him feel like he cared about you because you were the heartbeat of the club and you were what mattered. And that's a quality that I always pride myself on picking up on fast. People, if that makes sense. People who ask you how you are but care about the answer. That's the vibe I got from Darren Eales. But what an incredible job. He's overseen Newcastle get Champions League twice. And let's not forget that incredible day down at Wembley. So in his time in the role, hasn't been too bad going. So thank you very much, Darren. I think everyone associated with Newcastle hopes he gets well. It was never always a smooth ride overseeing the growth of this club. Not all decisions were 100% on the money, but I would say Darren Eales, especially coming from his background at what he did in Atlanta, got most right. So I wish him the greatest. But let's talk now about the man who's coming in to fill them shoes. So David Hopkinson, a Canadian, after working at the Maple Sports Group for a considerable amount of time, comes at us from a role working for the Madison Square Sports Group, which in layman's terms, for anyone who isn't aware, has basically been overseeing the New York Knicks in the NBA and the New York Rangers in the hockey. So 2 different teams. I've been to Madison Square Gardens before, the most bizarre, incredible arena itself. So that's where he was, in a role that ended up getting bumped up to being the president and essentially being the head of operations. And that's what he oversaw. But a lot of Newcastle fans, as a sell of the glamour of this man, were probably more interested in his role before he went to the Madison Square Sports Group. And that was at Real Madrid, who I think a lot of people watching this video would agree with me on are the biggest club in world football. Some might say Manchester United. Ugh. God, I just felt sick saying that out loud. Some might say Barcelona. There's a lot on that list, but for me, Real Madrid are the greatest, the biggest. European trophies, you name it. It's what every kid seems to dream at some point of playing for. You've seen so many Englishmen go there, and that's where he was working as head of partnerships. So what can we expect from David Hopkinson bringing that experience to Newcastle? There's only one place to start for me, and that is partnerships. Partnerships. He will, in my opinion, be heading up partnerships coming out of Newcastle United's ears. And look, it's already an area since this club has been taken over that we've grown in. That ugly, awful yellow badge that we see on every sleeve of every shirt that you buy in the club shop is a major partnership. Even down to Adidas returning, the Newcastle fans are still chucking every last penny they have for 1 million bits of merchandise a season. Down to Seller, that's helped Newcastle grow in Saudi Arabia with their incredible light shows. and their sponsorship branded on the strips and everywhere you look in St James's Park, down to the smaller ones. We've just announced partnerships with Red Bull, my favourite energy drink. We've got deals with Monster. We've just announced a new 3-year deal with Guinness. This is all Newcastle United working with really, really good brands that are global and that can put Newcastle globally out there, where every single brand like Adidas is recognisable and is known by countries all over the world. But what I found interesting about what David Hopkinson did at Real Madrid, already walking into a giant club, was he wanted to move their success with their global brands into more country-specific and local brands that could appeal to different markets.
Despite the fact that we're top of the Football League, we really have got an incredible opportunity to grow our partnership business around the world and commercialize that fan base.
Interesting to hear him talking about that there. And in layman terms, expect Newcastle to start trying to move into not just your Adidas and your Guinness that you'll find in almost every bar and every sports shop around the world, but expect Newcastle to start going after more noons, very specific to their country. Even a seller that, yes, might be doing more work around the world, including Newcastle United, but is still a household brand in the likes of Saudi Arabia. Expect Newcastle, just as examples, to be going after American-specific brands. Korea, where I've just visited for pre-season and was overwhelmed by the amount of support out there. The fact that Newcastle can put their face, their shirt and their crest on a brand that is specific to that country will help get the global appeal through the roof. And that was something that he went straight after at Real Madrid, to the point where he did this.
We did a regional promotion here with Kellogg's, and this is just really simple stuff. When you put our athletes, when you put our brand on the box of cereal or on the can, whatever the product is, we know it sells at a higher velocity because we know how to engage and excite people, whether they're in the supermarket, they're online, etc. This exceeded our expectations. We ran out of stock dramatically, exceeded Kellogg's expectations, the most successful promotion they've ever done, just in Latin America, just for one brand, with Real Madrid.
Yet a localised Real Madrid cereal campaign. Very small, and you might be thinking, not a giant fish in terms of what you could do, but imagine black and white Crispies, photo of Dan Burton scoring a header on the front of the box. I'd probably dig in with them. You know, maybe read a little bit about the club on the box. Remember when you were a kid and you'd sit and eat your cereal whilst reading something or doing a little puzzle? Imagine trying to find the Carabao, get Dan Burn through the maze to find the Carabao Cup. You get the drift here, that we will start looking at markets and brands that appeal to the younger generation, because a younger generation that start following Newcastle United, yes, you guessed it, are not only going to be very digitally savvy, which is where the world is going, but they potentially have 60 years of following that football club in them, in buying the strips, in going to matches, in visiting Newcastle and putting money into the football club. Expect us to go after all of those slightly more country-specific brands and also to appeal to different ages. To tie in with this, I would also expect bigger changes on social media. Now, from a quick glance on my side, I can see that Newcastle United right now, across Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter and YouTube, what I would class as the bigger boys, don't really count the Blue Stars and the Threads. Are Newcastle on Blue Star? Someone can get in the comments and let us know on that one. No disrespect if you're a user of those. Is roughly at about 18 million across all. That is a small fish in what is a very, very big pond and a very big opportunity. And although Mr. Hopkinson might be quite old, and my God, did Newcastle use an old photo of him, which I don't know how he's got away with, the photo of the announcement of him joining to his interviews when he's walking around the stadium. It looks like his photo on the club website was from about 20 years ago. But anyway, he has moved digitally and he's recognised that Real Madrid needed to continue growing in that area, because that is where the world is going. That is where the younger generation are, and that is where the movers and the shakers are going globally. And this is what he had to say about them doing it.
And that winning, that legacy of winning, that popularity around the world has given us a strong fan base in every country in the world. And our job in the commercial side is to do everything we can to grow the fortunes of the club by growing the revenues of the club and commercializing that fan base. So, fan base. What I've done here, and it's a bit of an eye chart if you're in the back, so let me explain. What I've got on this chart here is total social rankings of the top club in the top league in the top leagues around the world. So we're here in the white on the left side at 224 million social media followers around the world as the top club in La Liga.
Stadium changes. Look, it's the big question. We've had ghost silence on it for a long time now. Unexpected ghost silence. I think we all expected something in 2025 when we went into the new year, that something would come out. Are we moving? Are we expanding? Well, those questions are ongoing, and David Hopkinson was actually asked in one of his first interviews about the stadium, and he sort of joked and said, yeah, let's look at it. But that's not a conversation for today. Expect that to be one of the first things on his agenda. And as a fan who recognises the problems, whether it's 150,000 people being in a ballot and barely for Barcelona and barely anyone getting a ticket, the complaints about the stadium continue to ramble on. Do I think Newcastle is still a good enough sized stadium to offer a lot of what we need as a football club with a lick of paint? Yes. But are there plenty fans out there who would like to see Newcastle United move? Yes. And of course, the Bernabeu, one of the greatest arenas in the world, has been worked on and was being worked on during his reign at Real Madrid. And this is what he said about them renovating.
Taking it, it's an incredible institution, of course, an incredible, one of the most important sports facilities in the world. But it's 72 years old and it needs a reimagination. Today, it's a construction site as we move towards what the stadium is going to look like in 2023, the greatest stadium in the world.
I wouldn't compare the Bernabeu and St James's Park at all, but I would definitely argue that needs renovating, and the lick of paints and whatnot that he refers to there, talking publicly, is very, very similar. We've had a couple of upgrades. We've got some nice hospitality seats and some cocktail bars, and the concourse is a little bit nicer. But there's still a lot of work to be done. And I would personally, from everything I've read about this man and what he's done at the clubs he's worked at and the corporations he's worked at, to make that really, really high on the agenda. Now, my biggest observation about David Hopkinson in reading his very long interview, in reading what he's done at Real Madrid, at the Madison Square Sports Group, is that he talks a lot about the fans, the community, the passion, and what makes that particular club great and what embodies that club. Well, I really hope, in terms of Newcastle United, that all of this talk and all of the photos of him going to Peter Dillon's bar in New York to watch the Aston Villa game almost in disguise with his family to get a feel for the club is not just talk, is not just an image, because this is a Canadian who, if I'm being totally honest, has worked with Real Madrid, the biggest football club in the world, has worked with giant corporations bang in the centre of New York, has grown things to crazy levels in Canada, but Newcastle United are Newcastle United. And what I mean by that is Real Madrid already have that global appeal. Their stadium, I've got no doubts, they'll always have the season ticket holders, will be full of a million nationalities, and people come all over the world to watch them. They have a huge following in South America, a huge following in North America, a huge following in Asia. The teams in New York, we all know what sports are like in New York, very different. Newcastle United is in a funny place right now where we are already starting to feel a bit of a disconnect. And I think one thing that he needs to change very quickly is communication. Darren Eales was very good at it for a point when he had other people around him. Then Mehrdad left, Amanda left, and we feel like we get a bit of a ghost silence now. When changes are made, there's no statement about it. It took an Alexander Isak Instagram post saying that Newcastle were liars for us to hear any communication on that matter all summer, which left us as fans in the dark. I'm not saying that Hopkinson is going to touch on the pitch matters, and I'll talk about that in a second, but it's very important that he learns what makes this football club important, because if you strip the fans back, and Real Madrid, again, I'll keep saying it, and the New York, the NBA sides and the ice hockey sides are very different to a one-club city that is built on its working-class passion for what the football club does on a Saturday at 3 o'clock. He needs to understand that and realise that if you strip that away from Newcastle, it's not Newcastle anymore. But do I think that things might get worse from that point of view? Yes, I do. Now, sorry, I hate to talk negative, and it is just my opinion, but I think it's a direction that Newcastle were already going in, so you could argue it's not an opinion. David Hopkinson, in his time in the Madison Square Sports Group specifically, before he came here, it was really a big focus on pushing premium products a better quality of hospitality and the fan experience in Madison Square Gardens going through the roof. I see exactly the same changes coming in at Newcastle, going one better. Yes, we've got the wings, we've got the rooftop at crazy prices that we keep seeing rammed down our throats on the website. Is it a deliberate tactic that normal tickets are harder to get hold of now because they want you to take that hospitality option? Who knows? But I expect this man with his pedigree to really start pushing that so Newcastle can start growing in a level where we might be able to start competing with the bigger boys in the Premier League. And I know most of you watching that are not going to be very happy about that, but there's got to be a balance. And I really, really hope he's a quote that I found really interesting is that he's not in a position right now to tell any stories on Newcastle United, but he's sure as hell in a position to listen. Well, listen to the heartbeat of this football club, Mr. Hopkinson, is what I would say, because it's all well and good hospitality going through the roof, and that's where football is going. We understand PSR, we understand the need to keep growing and getting the word out on Newcastle around the world. But bottle up what makes this football club great and get the corporations, the overseas fans to buy into that. And I think we've made a step in the right direction with some of our launch videos for players signing, with locals talking about what makes the club great. That's not a bad start, as much as I didn't like some of them. But I will sit here and say that I worry that a man of his pedigree and his background, as much as he can listen to the working class bloke drinking a pint of Stella in Wetherspoons on a match day if he goes for a couple of pints with his family to feel a Newcastle home game, he might love that. But it's not of interest in him. He will have targets to hit, and I expect the hospitality factor, the dearer tickets, the fan experience to go through the roof on this one. But lastly, the on-the-field matters. I've seen a lot of people tagging and commenting as soon as he was announced a week ago, just over a week ago, I believe, that he needs to deal with this, he needs to sort that. I don't see David Hopkinson getting involved in any on-the-field matters. That will be the role of the sporting director, who we would expect to be announced next. It's not his background, it's not his experience. He is going to be coming in to grow partnerships, grow the revenue of the club, and make Newcastle United a household name around the world. How that goes, I'll leave that down to you. David Hopkinson has all the experience, all the knowledge to send Newcastle United to the next level, and that's why it's a massive coup for everyone involved in the boardroom and associated to the club. But at what cost is the question that I would ask with another big appointment like this. Let us know your thoughts down below, Newcastle fans, and if you've stuck around this long and found this slightly less Football Matters video quite interesting, do us a favour, give us a like, let us know down below, and get Black and White banter across all social media, including this one, by whacking the subscribe. And my next video, I promise, will be more Football Matters. But thank you very much for watching. And as always, as I always say, keep the faith. Away, lads!